Hey, hey everyone listening right now. Take a moment. You're probably sitting somewhere, doing something simple, but your mind is somewhere else. Welcome. Tonight, we're talking about relationships, not in a dramatic way, not in a rushed way, just honestly. I'm here with a guy who's 20, young, observing, learning, still figuring things out. Thanks for being here. Let's start slowly. Being 20, what does that actually feel like?
It feels confusing, not loudly confusing, quietly. You feel confident about some things and completely unsure about others. You think you know yourself, but then something small happens and everything shifts.
Something like a message.
Yes, a message, or the absence of one. It's strange how something so small can affect your mood. You don't expect it, but it does.
So, on the outside, you seem calm.
On the outside, yes. Inside, there's a lot happening. Thoughts, questions, assumptions. You replay conversations. You wonder what things meant, even if they meant nothing.
That sounds tiring.
It can be, but at the same time, it feels intense. And intensity feels important, especially at this age. It makes you feel alive, like something matters.
When did relationships stop feeling simple?
When feelings became involved. Before that, there's lightness, no expectations. After feelings, every action has weight. Every word matters. Every pause matters.
Is there a moment when you realize you're involved?
Yes, when you start saying, I don't really care, a little too quickly. When you notice yourself paying attention while pretending not to.
That pretending takes energy.
It does. You're trying to look relaxed while monitoring everything. You notice reply times. You notice tone. Silence feels louder than words.
Even when nothing is wrong.
Especially then, because your mind wants clarity. And when it doesn't get it, it creates its own explanations, not always fair ones.
That's often where tension starts.
Yes, not with arguments, with quiet discomfort, with things that aren't said, with the feeling that something is off, but nobody names it yet.
And people usually choose silence.
They do, because silence feels safer. Talking feels risky. If you speak, you might be misunderstood. So you wait, and waiting turns into distance.
Distance that grows quietly.
Exactly. You don't fight, you just feel less close. And that's harder to notice, but more damaging over time.
There's a sentence people use a lot.
I'm fine. That sentence is rarely true. It usually means I'm hurt, but I don't know how to explain it without feeling exposed.
Why does honesty feel so hard?
Because honesty makes you vulnerable. It shows that you care, and caring means you can be disappointed. At 20, that feels scary.
So people protect themselves.
Yes, by pulling back, by acting independent, by pretending they don't need much, even when they do.
So relationships at this age are...
A balance between wanting closeness and wanting control, between emotion and ego. You're learning while experiencing it, and that takes time.
And patience.
A lot of patience.
So once feelings are there, things don't explode immediately. They usually change quietly. Let's talk about conflict. Not loud arguments, but the subtle kind. How do disagreements usually begin?
They begin very small, so small that you don't even call it a problem. A tone, a delayed reply, a joke that doesn't land. Nothing dramatic, but something feels different, and you notice it.
So it's rarely about the moment itself.
Exactly. It's about what the moment represents. A late reply isn't just about time. It can feel like lack of interest. A short answer isn't about words. It can feel like lack of care.
And instead of asking, people often assume.
Yes, assumptions feel easier than conversations. You don't risk being wrong. You just tell yourself a story. And in that story, you're usually hurt or disappointed.
That inner story grows quickly.
It does. You replay the moment, you connect it to older feelings, you convince yourself something bigger is happening, even if there's no clear evidence.
So by the time you talk, you're already emotional.
Exactly. You're not reacting to what just happened, you're reacting to everything you imagined around it. That's when communication becomes difficult.
What does conflict look like then?
Quiet. Very quiet. Short messages, neutral words, less warmth. It's not aggressive, but it's noticeable if you pay attention.
Silence becomes a message.
Yes, and it's often used as protection. You don't want to say the wrong thing, so you say nothing. But silence isn't empty. It creates distance.
Why does silence feel safer than talking?
Because talking exposes you. If you speak, you admit that something affected you. Silence lets you keep control, at least at first.
But that control doesn't last.
No. Over time, silence creates uncertainty. You start missing the person, you start questioning yourself, and now you're both upset and unsure at the same time.
That's when things become confusing.
Very. You don't know if you should reach out or stay distant, if you're protecting yourself or making things worse.
Let's talk about jealousy. Gently. What is it really about?
Jealousy is rarely about the other person. It's about self-doubt. It's the fear that you might not be enough, that someone else could offer something you can't.
And social media adds fuel.
Yes, because now insecurity has visibility. You can see interactions, you can track attention, and that makes comparison constant.
At what point does that become control?
When questions stop being curious, when reassurance is needed all the time, when calm only exists if you have access to everything they do.
That creates pressure.
It does. One person feels watched, the other feels ashamed for needing so much reassurance. Both feel tense.
Do people talk about this openly?
Not often, especially guys. We tend to joke about it or minimize it because admitting insecurity feels uncomfortable.
So emotions get redirected.
Yes, into humor, into distance, into indifference, anything but honesty.
What actually helps in those moments?
Slowing down, naming the feeling early, saying, "This bothered me, and I'm not sure why yet." That creates space. It prevents resentment from building quietly.
That takes maturity.
It does, and maturity doesn't come naturally. It comes from noticing patterns, from seeing what silence costs, from choosing clarity over temporary comfort.
So conflict isn't the problem.
No, avoiding it is. Healthy conflict can bring understanding. Avoided conflict creates distance.
And distance grows slowly.
Yes, that's why it's dangerous. You don't notice it at first, but one day, it's there.
Let's stay slow here, because this part needs space. I want to talk about attachment, not the dramatic version, the quiet kind, the kind that grows without announcing itself. How does attachment usually show up for you?
It starts gently. You don't call it attachment, you call it comfort. You get used to someone, their presence, their messages, the way they respond. Over time, your routine begins to shift.
Shift in what way?
In small ways, you check your phone more often, you think before making plans, you consider how they might feel. It doesn't feel unhealthy, it feels normal at first.
So when does it cross a line?
When your emotions depend on them, when your day feels good only if they respond, when a bad moment feels heavier without their reassurance, that's when it changes.
That dependence can be hard to notice.
Very, because it doesn't arrive suddenly, it builds quietly, and by the time you notice, you're already adjusted to it.
Is that why being alone feels uncomfortable?
Yes, not because solitude is bad, but because it removes distraction. When you're alone, you're left with your thoughts, and thoughts ask questions about direction, about worth, about who you are without anyone validating you.
So relationships can become a way to avoid that.
Sometimes, not intentionally, but if someone is always there, you don't have to sit with uncertainty. That feels easier, but it can delay growth.
How does this connect to fear of commitment?
Commitment feels permanent, and at 20, nothing feels stable yet. You're changing. Your priorities shift. So committing feels like choosing before you fully understand yourself or the future.
So it's not fear of closeness.
No, it's fear of being wrong, fear of staying in something that doesn't fit anymore. Time feels valuable, and mistakes feel expensive.
That creates hesitation.
Yes, you stay partially available. You care, but you keep a distance, not fully present, not fully gone, which creates confusion,
For both people.
especially for yourself. You're not sure if you're protecting your future or avoiding vulnerability.
Let's talk about vulnerability. Why is it difficult, especially for guys?
Because it wasn't encouraged. We were taught to be steady, to handle things, to move forward, but not to express uncertainty. So when emotions appear, we don't always have words for them yet.
So they stay unspoken.
Yes, or they come out indirectly, as distance, as humor, as withdrawal, not because we don't care, but because we don't know how to express it clearly.
That can slowly damage connection.
It can, because the other person feels a shift, but doesn't understand it. They feel less included, less close, without a clear reason.
What helps prevent that distance?
Naming uncertainty, saying, I'm not sure what I'm feeling, but I want to understand it. That sentence creates space. It slows everything down. It invites patience instead of reaction.
That sounds like emotional awareness.
It is, and it takes practice. You don't learn it instantly. You learn it through mistakes, through moments where silence costs you more than honesty.
So growth comes from discomfort.
Yes, not from chaos, not from intensity, but from sitting with discomfort, from not escaping it immediately every time.
That's not easy.
No, but it's necessary, especially at this stage of life. You're learning while still becoming yourself.
And still expected to get it right.
Exactly, which is why patience matters, with yourself and with others.
Let's bring everything together slowly, because understanding relationships isn't about finding perfect answers. It's about noticing patterns. I want to talk about responsibility, not blame. Responsibility. What does that mean to you in a relationship?
It means noticing yourself, your reactions, your triggers, understanding that not every feeling needs to be acted on immediately. Some feelings just need attention, not action.
That's an important difference.
It is. At 20, emotions feel urgent, like they need instant response. But reacting too fast often creates more damage than waiting and understanding.
So emotional responsibility starts internally.
Yes, before asking someone else to change, you ask yourself what you're actually feeling. Not just anger, not just jealousy, but what's underneath it.
That takes honesty.
It does. And honesty with yourself is sometimes harder than honesty with others because you can't hide from it.
How does this change relationships?
It makes them calmer. Not boring, just calmer. You stop turning every discomfort into a crisis. You give things time. You allow misunderstanding to be corrected instead of assumed.
Time seems important here.
Very. Time creates clarity. Most conflicts don't need intensity. They need patience, a pause, a breath, space to think.
What about expectations?
Expectations need to be realistic. Your partner isn't there to complete you or regulate your emotions. They're there to share, not to fix.
That removes pressure.
It does. And when pressure leaves, connection has room to grow. You choose each other instead of needing each other to survive emotionally.
That sounds healthier.
It is. Healthier doesn't mean easier. It means more stable, less dramatic, more sustainable.
Let's talk about self-worth, because a lot of fear comes from there.
Yes, when your self-worth is fragile, relationships become proof. Proof that you matter. Proof that you're enough. That's a heavy role for another person.
So self-worth needs to exist outside the relationship.
Exactly. A relationship should add, not validate your existence. When you know your value, You don't need constant reassurance. You enjoy presence instead of fearing absence.
That changes how love feels.
It does. Love feels lighter, less tense, more mutual. You don't monitor, you trust. And if something feels off, you talk, not immediately, but intentionally and calmly.
What would you tell someone who feels lost in relationships right now?
Slow down. Nothing needs to be decided today. Feelings don't expire if you don't act on them instantly. Give yourself permission to not know yet.
And if someone feels behind?
There is no schedule, no timeline. Everyone learns differently. Some lessons come through love, some through loss. Both teach you something.
What does a healthy relationship look like to you now?
Two people taking responsibility for their own emotions, choosing each other freely, not out of fear, not out of loneliness, but out of respect and care.
That sounds grounded.
It is, and it took mistakes to get here. Misunderstandings, silence, overthinking, all of it taught something.
So being 20 is...
Learning, not mastering, feeling deeply, but responding thoughtfully, making mistakes, and staying curious instead of ashamed.
And relationships at this age are...
Practice, not final exams. They show you where you need growth, not where you failed.
That's a good place to end.
Yes, with patience, with awareness, and with the understanding that it's okay to still be learning.
Thank you for being here today. Honestly, these conversations don't happen enough, and what you shared really matters. I appreciate your honesty, your courage, and the way you spoke from your own experience. That kind of openness helps more people than you think. If this conversation made you slow down for a moment or reflect on your own relationships, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. Until next time, take care.